Episode 88, September 25th, 1915. The horror that was loose, and I saw a football in no man's land, by Patrick Macgill. Read by Jerry White. The author of Children of the Dead End and other well-known works, Patrick Macgill was a stretcher-bearer in the London Irish Rifles at the Battle of Loos. This account of his experiences was written at the time with all the power of an inspired writer describing an immediate journey into the land of blood and horror. He tells the famous story of how his comrades went over the top with a football. Before he joined the army in 1914, Patrick Macgill had been a navvy and a farm worker and a research student, and had, moreover, by then established a growing reputation as an author. It was no grey day, hazy and moist, and the thick clouds of pale yellow smoke curled high in space and curtained the dawn off from the scene of war. The word was passed along. London Irish, lead on to assembly trench. The assembly trench was in front, and there the scaling ladders were placed against the parapet. Ready steps to death, as someone remarked. I had a view of the men swarming up the ladders when I got there, their bayonets held in steady hands, and at a little distance off, a football swinging by its wang from a bayonet standard. The company was soon out in the open, marching forward. The enemy's guns were busy, and the rifle and Maxim bullets ripped the sandbags. The infantry fire was wild, but of slight intensity. The enemy could not see the attacking party, but, judging by the row, it was hard to think that the men could weather the leaden storm in the open. The big guns were not so vehement now. Our artillery had no doubt played havoc with the hostile batteries. I went to the front of a ladder and got hold of a rung. A soldier in front was clambering across. Suddenly, he dropped backwards and bore me to the ground. The bullet caught him in the forehead. I got to my feet to find a stranger in grey uniform coming down the ladder. He reached the floor of the trench, put up his hands when I looked at him, and cried in a weak, imploring voice, "Comrade, comrade!" "A German," I said to my mate. "Mm-hmm," he answered. I flung my stretcher over the parapet, and, followed by my comrade stretcher-bearer, I clambered up the ladder and went over the top. The moment had come when it was unwise to think. The country round Loos was like a sponge. The god of war had stamped with his foot on it, and thousands of men, armed, ready to kill, were squirted out onto the level barren fields of danger. To dwell for a moment on the novel position of being standing where 1,000 deaths swept by, missing you by a mere hair's breadth, would be sheer folly. There, on the open field of death, my life was out of my keeping, but the sensation of fear never entered my being. There was so much simplicity and so little effort in doing what I had done, in doing what 800 comrades had done, that I felt I could carry through the work before me with as much credit as my code of self-respect required. The Maxims went crackle like dry brushwood under the feet of a marching host. A bullet passed very close to my face like a sharp, sudden breath. A second hit the ground in front, flicked up a little shower of dust, and ricocheted to the left, hitting the earth many times before it found a resting place. The air was vicious with bullets. 1,000,000 invisible birds flicked their wings very close to my face. Ahead, the clouds of smoke, sluggish, low-lying fog, and fumes of bursting shells thick in volume, receded towards the German trenches and formed a striking background for the soldiers who were marching up a low slope towards the enemy's parapet, which the smoke still hid from view. There was no haste in the forward move. Every step was taken with regimental precision. And twice on the way across, the Irish boys halted for a moment to correct their alignment. Only at a point away on the right, there was some confusion and a little irregularity. Were the men wavering? No fear. The boys on the right were dribbling the elusive football towards the German trench. Raising the stretcher, my mate and I went forward. For the next few minutes, I was conscious of many things. A slight rain was falling. The smoke and fumes I saw had drifted back, exposing a dark streak on the field of green. The enemy's trench. A little distance away from me, 3 men hurried forward, and 2 of them carried a box of rifle ammunition. One of the bearers fell flat to the earth. His 2 mates halted for a moment, looked at the stricken boy, and seemed to puzzle at something. Then they caught hold of the box hangers and rushed forward. The man on the ground raised himself and looked after his mates, then sank down again to the wet ground. Another soldier came crawling towards us on his belly, looking for all the world like a gigantic lobster which had escaped from its basket. His lower lip was cut clean to the chin and hanging apart. Blood welled through the muddy khaki trousers where they covered the hips. I recognized the fellow. "Much hurt, matey?" I asked. "I'll manage to get in," he said. "Shall I put a dressing on?" "I'll manage to get into our own trench," he stammered, spitting the blood from his lips. "There are others out at the wire. S has caught it bad. Try and get him in, Pat." "Right, old man," I said, as he crawled off. "Good luck." My cap was blown off my head as if by a violent gust of wind, and it dropped on the ground. I put it on again, and at that moment a shell burst near at hand, and a dozen splinters sang by my ear. I walked forward with a steady step. What took my cap off? I asked myself. It went away just as if it was caught in a breeze. God, I muttered, in a burst of realization. It was that shell passing. I breathed very deeply. My blood rushed down to my toes, and an airy sensation filled my body. Then the stretcher dragged. "Lift the damn thing up," I called to my mate over my shoulder. There was no reply. I looked around to find him gone, even mixed up in a whooping rush of kilted Highlanders who had lost their objective and were now charging parallel to their own trench. Or perhaps he got killed. How strange that the Highlanders could not charge in silence, I thought, and then recollected that most of my boyhood friends, Donegal lads, were in Scottish regiments. I placed my stretcher on my shoulder, walked forward towards a bank of smoke, and came across our platoon sergeant and part of his company. "Are we going wrong, or are the Jocks wrong?" he asked his men. Then shouted, "Lie flat, boys, for a minute, until we see where we are. There's a big crucifix in Loos churchyard, and we've got to draw on that." The men threw themselves flat. The sergeant went down on one knee and leaned forward on his rifle, his hands on the bayonet standard, the fingers pointed upwards, and the palms pressed close to the sword, which was covered with rust. How hard it would be to draw it from a dead body. The sergeant seemed to be kneeling in prayer. In front, the cloud cleared away, and the black crucifix standing over the graves of Loos became revealed. "Advance, boys," said the sergeant. "Steady on to the foot of the cross and rip the swine out of their trenches." The Irish went forward. A shell struck the ground in front, burrowed, and failed to explode. Men and pieces of men were lying all over the place. A leg, an arm, then again a leg, cut off at the hip. A finely formed leg, the latter, gracefully putteed. A dummy leg in a tailor's window could not be more graceful. It might be X. He was an artist in dress, a Beau Brummel in khaki. 50 yards further along, I found the rest of X. The harrowing sight was repellent, antagonistic to my mind. The tortured things lying at my feet were symbols of insecurity, ominous reminders of danger from which no discretion could save a man. My soul was barren of pity. Fear went down into the innermost parts of me. Fear for myself. The dead and dying lay all around me. I felt a vague obligation to the latter. They must be carried out. But why should I trouble? Where could I begin? Everything was so far apart. I was too puny to start my labours in such a derelict world. A figure in grey, a massive block of Bavarian bone and muscle, came running towards me, and Bill Teak following him with a long bayonet. "A prisoner!" yelled the boy on seeing me. "Comrade! Comrade!" he shouted when I came up. "Blimey! I couldn't stab him, so I took him prisoner. It's not half a Barney. Have you got his fag to spare?" The Cockney came to a halt, reached for a cigarette, and lit it. The German stood still, panting like a dog. "Double, Fritz, double!" shouted the boy, sending a little puff of smoke through his nose. "Over to our trench you go. Grease along if you don't want the bayonet up your—" He rushed off. The German with hands in air, and Bill behind with his bayonet perilously close to the prisoner. There was something amusing in the incident, and I could not refrain from laughing. Then I got a whiff from a German gas bomb which exploded near me, and I began spluttering and coughing. The irritation, only momentary, was succeeded by a strange humour. I felt as if walking on air. My head got light, and it was with difficulty that I kept my feet on earth. It would be so easy to rise into space and float away. The sensation was a delightful one. I felt so pleased with myself, with everything. A wounded man lay on the ground, clawing the earth with frenzied fingers. In a vague way I remembered some ancient law which ordained me to assist the stricken man, but I could not do so now. The action would clog my buoyancy, and that delightful feeling of freedom which permeated my being. Another soldier whom I recognized, even at a distance, by his pink and white bald pate, so often a subject for our jokes, reeled over the blood-stained earth, his eyes almost bursting from their sockets. "You look bad," I said to him with a smile. He stared at me drunkenly, but did not answer. A man, mother naked, raced round in a circle, laughing boisterously. The rags that would class him as a friend or foe were gone, and I could not tell whether he was an Englishman or a German. As I watched him, an impartial bullet went through his forehead, and he fell headlong to the earth. The sight sobered me. Up near the German wire, I found our company postman, sitting in a shell hole, a bullet in his leg below the knee, and an unlighted cigarette in his mouth. "You're the man I want," he shouted on seeing me, and I fumbled in my haversack for bandages. "No dressing for me yet," he said, with a smile. "There are others needing help more than I. What I want is a match." As I handed him my matchbox, a big, high-explosive shell flew over our heads and dropped 50 yards away in a little hollow where 7 or 8 figures in khaki lay prostrate, faces to the ground. The shell burst, and the wounded and dead rose slowly into the air, to a height of 6 or 7 yards, and dropped slowly again, looking for all the world like puppets worked by wires. "This," said the postman who had observed the incident, "is a solution of a question which diplomacy could not settle, I suppose. The last arguments of kings is a damned sorry business." By the German barbed wire entanglements were the shambles of war. Here our men were seen by the enemy for the first time that morning. Up till then, the foe had fired erratically through the oncoming curtain of smoke. But when the cloud cleared away, the attackers were seen advancing, picking their way through the wires which had been cut to pieces by our bombardment. The Irish were now met with harrying rifle fire, deadly petrol bombs, and hand grenades. Here I came across dead, dying, and sorely wounded, lives maimed and finished, and all the romance and roving that makes up the life of a soldier gone forever. Here, too, I saw, bullet-riddled, against one of the spiderwebs known as Ch14, a limp lump of pliable leather, the football which the boys had kicked across the field. I came across Flannry, lying close to a barbed wire support, one arm round it as if in embrace. He was a clumsily built fellow, with queer, bushy eyebrows and a short, squat nose. His bearing was never soldierly, but on a march he could bear any burden, and stick to job when more alert men fell out. He always bore himself, however, with a certain grace, due, perhaps, to a placid belief in his own strength. He never made friends. A being apart, he led a solitary life. Now he lay close to earth, hugging an entanglement prop, and dying. There was something savage in the expression of his face as he looked slowly round, like an ox under a yoke, on my approach. I knelt down beside him and cut his tunic with my scissors, where a burnt hole clotted with blood showed under the kidney. A splinter of shell had torn part of the man's side away. All hope was lost for the poor soul. "In much pain, chummy?" I asked. "Ah, Christ, yes, Pat," he answered. "Wife and 2 kiddies too. Are we getting the best of it?" I did not know how the fight was progressing, but I had seen a line of bayonets drawing near to the second trench out by Loos. "Winning all along," I answered. "That's good," he said. "Is there any hope for me?" "Of course there is, matey," I lied. "You have 2 of these morphia tablets and lie quiet. We'll take you in after a while, and you'll be back in England in 2 or 3 days' time." I placed the morphia under his tongue, and he closed his eyes as if going to sleep. Then, with an effort, he tried to get up, and gripped the wire support with such vigour that it came clean out of the ground. His leg shot out from under him, and, muttering something about rations being fit for pigs and not men, he fell back and died. The fighting was not over in the front trench yet. The 2 companies had gone ahead. The other 2 companies were taking possession here. A sturdy Bavarian, in shirt and pants, was standing on a banquette with his bayonet over the parapet, and a determined look in his eyes. He had already done for 2 of our men as they tried to cross, but now his rifle seemed to be unloaded, and he waited. Standing there amid his dead countrymen, he formed a striking figure. A bullet from one of our rifles would have ended his career speedily, but no one seemed to want to fire that shot. There was a moment of suspense, broken only when the monstrous futility of resistance became apparent to him, and he threw down his rifle and put up his hands, shouting, "Comrade, comrade." I don't know what became of him afterwards. 4 boys rushed up, panting under the machine gun and ammunition belts which they carried. One got hit and fell to the ground. The Maxim tripod which he carried fell on top of him. The remainder of the party came to a halt. "Lift the tripod and come along," his mates shouted to one another. "Who's going to carry it?" asked the little fellow with a box of ammunition. "You," came the answer. "Some other one must carry it," said the little fellow. "I've the heaviest burden." "You've not," one answered. "Get the blurry thing on your shoulder." "Blurry yourself," said the little fellow. "Someone else carry the thing. Marnie can carry it." "I'm not a damn fool," said Marnie. "It can stick there, for I take it across." "Not much good going over without it," said the little fellow. I left them there wrangling. The extra weight would have made no appreciable difference to any of them. It was interesting to see how the events of the morning had changed the nature of the boys. Mild-mannered youths who had spent their working hours of civil life in scratching with inky pens on white paper, and their hours of relaxation in cutting capers on roller skates and helping dainty maidens to tea and ices, became possessed of mad, berserker rage and ungovernable fury. Know that their work was war, the blood-stained bayonet gave them play in which they seemed to glory. "Here's one that I've just done in," I heard Mcronone shout, looking approvingly at a dead German. "That's 5 of the bloody swine now." Mcrone's mother never sends her son any money, lest he gets into the evil habit of smoking cigarettes. He is of a religious turn of mind, and delights in singing hymns, his favourite being, "There is a green hill far away." I never heard him swear before, but at Loos, his language would make a navvy in a Saturday night taproom green with envy. Mcronone was not lacking in courage. I have seen him wait for death with untroubled front in a shell-harried trench, and now, inflicting pain on others, he was a fiend personified. Such transformations are of common occurrence on the field of honour. The German trench had suffered severely from our fire. Parapets were blown in, and at places the trench was full to the level of the ground with sandbags and earth. Wreckage was strewn all over the place. Rifles, twisted distortions of shapeless metal, caught by high-velocity shells. Machine guns smashed to atoms. Bomb-proof shelters broken to pieces like houses of cards. Giants had been at work of destruction. On the reverse slope of the parapet, broken tins, rusty swords, muddy equipments, wicked-looking coils of barbed wire, and discarded articles of clothing were scattered about pell-mell. I noticed an unexploded shell perched on a sandbag, cocking a perky nose in air, and beside it was a battered helmet, the brass glory of its regal eagle, dimmed with trench mud and wrecked with many a bullet. I had a clear, personal impression of man's ingenuity for destruction when my eyes looked on the German front line, where our dead lay in peace with their fallen comrades on the parapet. At the bottom of the trench, the dead lay thick, and our boys, engaged in building a new parapet, were heaping the sandbags on the dead men and consolidating the captured position.
Goodbye, goodbye, why the tree may be dear from your eye, though it's hard to part I know. I'll be till to death I know, don't cry, don't sigh, there's a silver lining in the sky, but swallowed think, cheerio, chin-chin, now toodle-oo, goodbye. Brother Bert, he went away to do his bit the other day. With a smile on his lips and his lieutenant lips upon his shoulder, bright and gay. As the train moved out, he said, remember me to all the birds, though he wagged his paw and went away to war, shouting out these pathetic words. Goodbye, goodbye, when the tear may be dear from your eye, oh, it's hard to part, I know. I'll be till to death I go, don't cry, don't sigh, there's a silver lining in the sky, one squad or thing, cheerio, chin-chin, now pull